Hey everyone, it's Charlene. Today I'm going to be using the Wreath Building Potted Plant stamps. These are brand new from Picket, and I'm going to be making some wreath cards. You can see here I have my Altenew stamp wheel. This makes the process very easy. And I like to start out by putting a stamp in the 12 o'clock position on the stamp wheel. I'm using the black hybrid ink because I'm going to be doing some alcohol marker coloring, and the black hybrid ink is great for alcohol markers, watercolors, colored pencils, pretty much anything you can throw at it. So you can see what I did is I started out by inking up one of these small stamps from the potted plant set, and I went ahead and flipped my plate and stamped it down at the bottom. Now I'm going to do the same thing at the top. So I've got a stamp here in the 12 o'clock position now and in the 6 o'clock position. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do the 3 o'clock and the 9 o'clock position. That just helps me make sure that I get all of my stamps in the right spots when I'm making a wreath. Now when I go back in, I know that I'll need to stamp again in between the spots where I've already stamped, and that's going to give me a perfectly rounded wreath. Now what I really like about this stamp set is there's lots of different sizes of stamped potted plants, which means I can very easily come in here now with a different one of the potted plants, and it's all going to look cohesive. It's all going to look like it's supposed to go together. Really easy to do. So you can see I am lining up my stamp here. Just want to make sure it's evenly spaced in between the 12 o'clock and the 3 o'clock. So that way when I ink it up and put it down, it's going to look really nice all the way around in each of those 4 spots. So a couple of different tips if you have the Altenew stamp wheel and you kind of struggle with figuring out where to put things down. Some people like to put little enamel dots at the 12, 3, 6, and 9 positions on the actual acrylic plate, and that helps them be able to keep track of where they're stamping. I also know that some people will write numbers in permanent marker all the way around the edges on the little kind of pieces that poke out as you go around on the plate, and they find that that helps them when they are trying to figure out where they are. I'm more of a visual person, so I pay attention to what's going on the cardstock. And for me, I know, okay, I need to make sure the stamps are lined up before I go in and actually stamp. And then I just make sure as I'm putting the plate down, I make sure that the stamp is actually where I want it to go. So you'll see me throughout this video a couple of times. I'll start to put the plate down and then I'll adjust the plate because I know, oops, maybe that's not exactly going to go down in the right spot. But as long as you don't have all 4 of those corners of the stamp wheel down, see, like, look, there's an example of that. As long as you don't have all 4 corners of it down, it's not going to cause you any issues. It's not going to stamp down on your cardstock until all 4 corners are down. So I've brought in this other potted plant. I'm going around and you can see I'm putting the stamped potted plant in between the 2 potted plants that are kind of in that first layered circle of the wreath. Hopefully that makes sense. But you can think of your wreath as having kind of circle layers. The first one's going to be your center circle, whatever those stamped images are. And then you can move on to a second circle, which will kind of fit in between those pieces that you did in your first circle. So I've gone around, I've done 4 in each of the quadrants, and now I know I can come back and I can stamp another one. Now the biggest problem that you run into when you are making wreaths is that a stamp you choose might not fit well. So it's always a good idea to kind of take your time and make sure you are stamping things where you want them to be, because it can be really easy to misstamp things. So I kept this part of the video in here because I wanted to show you, I went around, I did that first potted plant, and then I thought, okay, I'm going to come in here with a different potted plant for the other remaining spots. But as you could see, as I went to put it down, nothing was fitting correctly. So rather than just get frustrated and stamp it down and ruin what I had already done or something along those lines, I stopped, I flipped my plate over, I said, okay, something's not working here. Let me take the stamp and put it down on the cardstock. So I cleaned it off, put it down on the cardstock, and now when I picked it up with my plate, I know it's going to fit perfectly in between those two potted plants there. And I'm not going to have any issues with the other remaining 3 spots because those stamps are already in the exact same position as where I've just stamped in relation to the wreath. So hopefully that makes sense. But essentially, if you are stamping in between 2 images that are repeating around on your wreath, as long as you position that next stamp so that it fits in between those 2 stamps, anywhere else you have those 2 stamps, it's going to also fit perfectly. So practice really helps. Taking your time really helps. And also thinking about your piece of cardstock as having 4 quadrants, 1, 2, 3, 4, like you were going around in a circle. And also thinking about things like a clock helps a lot. So you could say 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock. So now that I have all of my little stamped images on there, I'm going to come in and I'm going to stamp my sentiment in the center. You could do this first if you prefer, but I like to stamp my sentiment last because then I know I can make sure it's sitting right in the center of everything that's going on in the wreath. Or you could use a die cut sentiment to put on there, which is what I'm actually going to be doing on the second card that we put together. So this stamp says thank you. It's also in that Potted Plants wreath set. There's lots of small, cute little sentiments that work really well when you are making wreath cards. But once I have everything stamped down, I can now go ahead and do some of my alcohol marker coloring. I'm using Olo markers to color my image, but you certainly could use Copics or whatever kind of alcohol markers that you have on hand. I'll let you know what the colors are here. For the pots, I'm doing everything in O2.5 and O2.7. That's going to give me this nice terracotta color. And essentially, I'm coming in and I'm doing the edges and underneath the lip of the potted plant with the 2.7. And then I'm coming in with the 2.5 and blending it all together. So it looks like there is a highlight towards the center of the pot and then shadow on the sides of the pot. If you don't have alcohol markers, you also could watercolor, you could color pencil, you could do whatever kind of medium that you have to color in these cute little potted plants. This would even look really cute if you did kind of each stamp in a different color and didn't color anything in, and then you could just have like a rainbow of different potted plants on your card. That would look really sweet as well. So for my leaves, I've come in here with some YG 2.3 and some YG 2.5. You'll see that I am also going to come in with some YG 8.5 and YG 8.7. So I did some of the leaves in that first combination, and then I did some of the leaves in the other combination, and I alternated. I used that for the stems as well. So alternating when you're working with the wreath always looks really nice because it just makes it all look like it works well together. For these pink flowers here, I'm coming in with some RV 0.2 and RV 0.4. Now these are really small little images, so you definitely don't need more than 2 colors when you're coloring them. I came in here with some Y2.3 and Y8.7 for those flowers, and then for the purple flowers, I'm using some V2.4 and V2.6, and then I'll be coloring in some red flowers, and that will be with R0.5 and R0.6. So just tiny bits of shading here and there, nothing too wild or crazy, just because, like I said, these are really small images and it would be very hard to get in there and try and do, like a light, a medium, and a dark, which is what I usually do on my larger images. So I've pulled out some of these super cute sequins. These are actually from the Winter Frost embellishments. So it's a wintertime embellishment set. It's got Christmas trees and snowflakes, but then it has these gorgeous, almost petal-shaped iridescent sequins in there, which kind of look like snowflakes when they're in that mix, but when you take them out of that mix, they look like iridescent little flowers. So it's nice because it's kind of doing double duty. I can use it year round. For my placement, I just put a dot of glue and then I use my wax tool to get my sequin down. Now I'm going to glue this to an A2 sized card front, so it's 4¼ inches by 5½ inches, and that is going to finish off my first wreath card. Super easy to do, but so cute and fun. I love anything that's miniature. It's just adorable. So for my second wreath card, I wanted to show you that you can make a square wreath. You don't have to do everything in a circle. So what I did is I took 2 of the potted plants and I lined them up in a straight line on my cardstock. So I do want to point out, you see that center plus sign on the acrylic plate that comes with the stamp wheel? I always try to make sure that my piece of cardstock that I've put inside the stamp wheel is centered with that plus sign. So that way I know when I'm going in and doing a wreath that as long as I am spacing things based on that plus sign, that the stamped images will be on the center of my card. Hopefully that makes sense. If you're wanting to do kind of a side stamped wreath where you only have part of a wreath coming onto the card, what I would actually recommend doing is just using a larger piece of cardstock, stamping out the full wreath, and then you can cut that cardstock down and you can actually get 2 card fronts where you have half of a wreath for 2 different cards. So I did the top 2 potted plants, the bottom 2, then I did the left hand side 2, that's in the 9 o'clock position, and now I'm going to come in here with the 3 o'clock position. And you can see this is kind of fun because it almost has more of a kaleidoscope look to it rather than a wreath look. You could leave that as is and just have that center square. What I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to bring in another one of the small potted plants and I'm going to put it in between the corner pieces. So where the top 2 and the right 2 kind of are at an angle, I lined up that little piece in there. And now I know if I stamp in all 4 of the corners, this tiny stamp is going to work perfectly. This gives it kind of a fun and whimsical look. It's different from your standard wreath, and I think it's a really fun take on that traditional wreath style of card. And you'll notice that I've done repeating patterns on both of these cards, but you could certainly use a different stamp out of that potted plants stamp set in order to have a wreath that's just full of all kinds of different potted plants. I would say if you're going to do that, the best way is to use the larger potted plants first for whatever your center circle piece is going to be, or your center square in this case for this card, and then use smaller plants as you work your way out. So there's plants that are even smaller than the ones that I have used here in that stamp set. For this card, I came in and I used my colored pencils. I'm using Prismacolor, but there's lots of different colored pencils available out there in the market. But I'm not an expert when it comes to colored pencils at all, so I'm not going to go through the entirety of my pencil coloring, but I did follow a very similar process to what I use with my alcohol ink markers. The main thing when it comes to colored pencils is that layering works really well. You don't want to push down really hard with your colored pencils. You want to do a light layer of whatever color you're trying to put down, and then you can come in with a darker colored pencil and put your shading in, and then you can come back with your lighter colored pencil to kind of blend it all out. So on these small images, that's what I did. I just used 2 different color pencils, say that 10 times quickly, for each of the little areas on the potted plants. Now, one thing I really do like with colored pencils is a white colored pencil. It allows you to come in and add some highlight. It makes it so easy. I wish that when you were working with alcohol ink markers, you had something that you could just come in at the end and add highlight like this. It's so nice to have. So I definitely recommend, if you're working with colored pencils, to make sure you have a white one. It makes that highlight addition super easy. For my sentiment on this card, I'm using a word die from the Hi, Hey, Howdy, Hello dies. I'm using the Hi word die, and I've cut it out 3 times from black cardstock. I did layer those layers together with some liquid glue, and you can see I'm going to come in here and put my sentiment at an angle rather than straight on. So it is hard to get an angled sentiment to look intentionally angled and not just kind of sloppily angled. So keep that in mind. I actually find it's easier to put them on there straight, but I thought it'd be fun and whimsical to have this one at a little bit of an angle with the kind of straight lines of that square kaleidoscope looking wreath that we created. So now we can go ahead and put our whole card together. I'm popping up this center piece. I went ahead and cut it down a little bit, and I'm going to pop it up on this nice blue cardstock here with some foam tape. And once I have that down, I'm going to glue this whole piece to an A2 sized card base with some liquid glue. Lastly, I'm going to add some more of those really pretty iridescent petal looking pieces from that Winter Frost Embellishments set, and I'm just interspersing them here and there, making sure that they're evenly placed all the way around. That works well with a wreath. You can see I've got 3 in a triangle formation, but I have the exact same 3 mirrored in the bottom left hand corner that I do in the right hand top corner. That's going to finish off our second card. I think this is adorable. I did want to bring that first card back in here just to show you guys so you can see the difference between the 2 styles, between the square wreath and the round wreath. I hope you guys picked up some tips and tricks today. Thank you so much for joining me. Please be sure to like and subscribe, as well as hit that notification bell so that you'll know about future videos here on the Picket Studios YouTube channel. I hope you all have a wonderful day.